Are you new to tarot and want to learn how to conduct a reading? Stay tuned because this video will teach you how. Hi everybody, I'm Sue Ellen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we're learning how to read tarot one card at a time. In today's video, we'll be learning specifically how to conduct a tarot reading for yourself, although all of the information can be applied to reading for others. I will be using the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot, and there is a link below. We'll be focusing on what to do before, during, and after the reading, and I'll give you an example of how to conduct a 3-card reading. Stay tuned until the end to learn some do's and don'ts that will help make the reading easier. First, let's talk about what you'll need. First of all, you need a tarot deck. I highly recommend using some version of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck because there are so many more resources available on how to read it. If you don't connect with the deck or can't overlook the fact that it is all white people in funny costumes, find a deck that you can relate to. The second thing you'll need is some kind of guidebook. Some of the decks have really nice books that accompany them. I use the Radiant Rider-Waite deck, and the guidebook is written by Avia Benefica. It is full color and 264 pages long. On your screen, you can see an example of the Queen of Pentacles pages. They include a short description, upright and reversed keywords, questions to ask yourself, and the meanings of the cards in several types of reading. At the end, she gives examples of spreads, and you can see the Take Action spread that you will find on pages 212 and 213. She also has frequently asked questions and a glossary. So it is a really good guidebook, in my opinion. The third thing I recommend is that you keep some type of a tarot journal. This is a place to record your readings so that you can look back and learn from them. This can be as simple as a 3-ring notebook or a Word document. I would record the date, the question, the spread used, and the cards that I pulled. Then I would make notes about my impressions, what the cards mean, and how I ultimately answered the question. All of this is personal choice. Some people have beautiful leather-bound journals and include information such as the phase of the moon and the location of the reading. I talk a lot more about how to create a tarot journal in the video about reading cards intuitively, which I've linked to below. The final thing that I recommend is a place where you can conduct the reading, hopefully where you won't get too many interruptions. You do not need to have a separate, soundproof room in your house with an altar and candles and incense and New Age music, although that would be awesome. I do my readings either in my office in front of the computer or sitting in a lazy boy chair in front of the TV with the TV off. Both places afford me privacy, but I don't light candles or burn incense. I have grown children, so privacy is easy for me. Privacy is not a requirement, but like anything else you're trying to do, it makes things easier if you don't have interruptions. The second thing to consider is your depth of knowledge. Before you start reading the cards, I think it's good to decide how much, if anything, you want to learn about the cards before you start reading. I'm going to use the example of learning a foreign language. If I were traveling, I'd be the person who took language lessons so I could understand what was going on around me, so I would be sure to be able to ask where to find a bathroom and whether there was gluten in my breakfast. But there are many people who would hop on the plane without any preparation and trust they could figure it out, and they probably would have a great vacation. It's the same thing in tarot. There are people who unwrap their first tarot deck, shuffle, and start doing readings. That is perfectly okay, and depending on how you learn, that could work really well for you. However, I think it's easier if you have a bit of a background and understand the structure of the deck, the meaning of the suits, and some of the terms. Specifically, I think it's beneficial to understand the difference between the major and minor arcana, what court cards represent, the meanings of the suits, and why an ace represents different things than the tens. Knowing the basics will mean that your reading makes a whole lot more sense. If you go the route of research first, I think you should make a few decisions, and that is about how much you want to learn. You might decide just to learn 1 or 2 keywords about each card to get started. Beyond that, readings fall into broad categories. In the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot guidebook that I use, And I mentioned earlier, the author covers 5 categories of readings for each card. There are core readings and then readings related to love, money, career, and family. You might have noticed in my videos of each card that I focus on core or general readings because adding all of the other kinds of readings would have been too overwhelming for me when I was just learning. You can also add many other layers to each card, including astrology, numerology, and Kabbalah, which is the Jewish tree of life. The Kabbalah tree of life has 10 spheres which are connected by 22 paths, and each path represents a major arcana card. It is really amazing in terms of symbolism, but can also be extremely overwhelming to learn. If I waited until I understood any of these things, I would never have had the confidence to conduct a reading. So I would keep what you learn about the cards as simple as possible in the beginning. The final decision is about whether or not to read reversals, which means that you read the cards in both the upright and upside down or reversed positions. I am a big fan of reversals, and you can check out my videos on this subject, which I've linked to below. However, in the beginning, you might find it too overwhelming and might choose to stick to just the meanings of the upright cards. It's totally up to you. The third step is to formulate your question. A good reading starts with a good question. Keep your questions clear, specific, open-ended, and focused on providing you with insight about your situation and action about how to move forward. Don't ask questions about people or situations that you can't control. Also, make sure that your question focuses on one thing only. If you have multiple questions, ask a separate question in each reading. A good question is, what can I do to strengthen my relationship with my significant other? A bad question is, why is my spouse such a jerk, and should I leave him in the next 5 days, and who will get custody of the dog? For demonstration purposes, I've chosen to answer the question, what obstacles, challenges, and opportunities will I face if I go back to college and finish my degree? I like to write down the question in my tarot journal before I get started. The fourth step is about choosing the cards that you will pull to answer the question. In the beginning, I recommend no more than 3 cards. Pulling a single card is fine, and there's nothing wrong with keeping things simple. Personally, I've gotten some great, insightful answers from a single card. If you are pulling multiple cards, it is helpful to use a spread that is appropriate to the question. A spread is a specific order in which you lay out the cards to answer the question. Although using a spread is optional, personally I find using a spread to be helpful because it gives you an idea of what each card is supposed to mean, so it makes interpreting the cards a lot easier. There are probably thousands of spreads. Here are 3 common ones. Here's the past, present, future spread. Card number 1 shows the past influences or events. Card number 2 shows the present situation or current state. Card number 3 shows the future outcome or direction. Here's the problem, cause, solution spread. Card number 1 shows the problem or issue at hand. Card number 2 shows the cause or underlying factors. And card number 3 shows the solution or resolution. Here's the strengths, weaknesses, advice spread. Card number 1 shows your strengths in the current situation. Card number 2 shows your weaknesses or challenges. And card number 3 shows advice on how to proceed. You have to choose a spread that answers the question. If I'm answering a question about obstacles, challenges, and opportunities, I need a spread that addresses these elements and not the problem, cause, and solution. You've made it this far in the video, and I wanted to stop and ask for a favor if you're not already a subscriber, and that is to please hit the subscribe button. It is free for you, and it will also help me grow this channel. Plus, it means that you won't miss anything. Thanks so much, and if you're already a subscriber, I truly appreciate your ongoing support. Now let's get back to the video. In step 5, we'll talk about physically getting ready for the reading, which includes shuffling the deck. It's good to do a bit of preparation to put yourself in the right mindset. It's kind of like how making your bed in the morning makes you feel like your day is starting off in an organized manner even though it's not required. Tarot readers have all sorts of ways to prepare for their readings. I keep it simple and just take a few deep breaths to center myself. Other people have elaborate rituals. They unwrap their deck from its silk wrapping, lay out a special cloth, light candles or incense, make themselves a cup of herbal tea, and/or say a prayer. Do what works for you. Step 6 is about actually reading the cards. When reading the cards, the most important thing to remember is to keep your question in mind and stay focused. Don't start off with a question about whether you should change jobs, look at the cards you pulled, and decide the reading is actually about whether or not you are in love with your partner. Or maybe it's whether your child is in love with their partner. And if that's the case, will they ever get married or just live together? Don't do that. Stay focused. That's why I like to write down the question, because it keeps me from going off on tangents. I have a whole video on reading cards intuitively that you might find helpful, and I'm not going to repeat everything here. Basically, what you are doing is looking at the cards without focusing on the traditional or book meanings. Here's an example of the 3-card spread to answer the question, what obstacles, challenges, and opportunities will I face if I go back to college and finish my degree? In this case, I will be using an obstacle, challenge, opportunity spread. Card number 1 is about the main obstacle I am facing about going back to college, and I drew the 8 of Swords. Card number 2 is about the main challenge I am facing about going back to college, and I drew the 10 of Wands. And card number 3 is about the opportunities that will exist once I complete my degree, and I drew the Queen of Pentacles. The first thing I do is look at the cards holistically and see what I notice, without taking into consideration the traditional meanings of the cards or their position in the spread. Here's what runs through my mind. What do I see? How does it make me feel? What comes to mind? What are the commonalities? What are the differences? What is missing? How do they progress or interact? As I'm thinking these through, I make notes in my tarot journal. So here's how I'd interpret these 3 cards. I try not to censor myself, so I apologize if you think I sound like an idiot. That's the benefit from reading for yourself. The only person criticizing you is you. So here we go. On first glance, the first 2 cards make me feel stressed. The woman in the 8 of Swords looks like she's in prison. The second card looks like he's carrying a heavy burden. All 3 cards have blue skies or sunny skies. They were all outdoors. There was 1 person in each card. The third card looks a lot more positive. The people are all facing in different directions. In the 8 of Swords, she is looking directly at me. The 10 of Swords is looking away from me. And the Queen of Pentacles is looking to my left. Next, I go to my understanding of the cards. First, I noticed that these are all minor arcana cards, so this is a life issue and not a huge karmic issue. In the minor arcana, aces are at the beginning of the journey and the 10s are at the end. So the first card is nearing the end of her journey and the second card is at the end. I know that court cards are situations, people in our lives, or parts of ourselves. So I wonder if the Queen of Pentacles represents me or perhaps a mother figure in my life. I also look at the suits. I know that swords are about thoughts and communication, wands are about action, and pentacles are about health and wealth. I notice that the cups are missing, so there's nothing here about emotions and relationships, which is interesting. We read cards from left to right, so the Queen of Pentacles is in the outcome position, and it looks like things have turned out well. Next, I look at the individual meanings of the cards. I do my best to remember these if I can, at least at first. If you have no idea what the cards mean, consult your guidebook. I'm actually going to read what my guidebook says about each of the cards to give you an idea, because I relied heavily on the guidebooks in the beginning, and that is perfectly okay. Now I seldom consult it. This is from Exploring Tarot Using Radiant Rider-Waite-Smith by Avia Benefica. In the obstacle position, we have the 8 of Swords. Here's what the book says, quote, "You set your sights high, but circumstances didn't live up to your expectations. The disappointment paralyzed you and you feel victimized. You are ignoring other opportunities. Your negative attitude is preventing you from taking action. Constant worry and nagging thoughts keep you feeling powerless." Unquote. And what I do next is reflect on the meaning of the card. So I realize the main obstacle that I am facing about going back to school is my attitude. I admit that I'm feeling disappointed and victimized. I'm being forced to get my degree because our company policy has changed, and I'll be fired unless I have my bachelor's degree. I'm disappointed in my company and feel like this is completely unfair because a degree is not required to do my job. After all, I've been doing it fine for more than 10 years. However, I really haven't considered the other option, which is quitting and finding a job that doesn't require a degree. Maybe there's a part of me that would actually like to have more education. At this point, I also add in what I already know about the cards, and that is, although the woman appears to be restrained and in a prison of the swords, this is not true. The restraints are on loosely and she could easily break free. Also, the swords do not completely encircle her and she can easily get out of what looks like a prison. So even though she feels disappointed and victimized, she can change her thoughts and attitude if she chooses to. Now let's move on to the Ten of Wands, which is in the challenges position. Here's what my guidebook says, quote, "You've been busy. You spent a long time, perhaps a lifetime, gathering ideas, resources, and tools. Now you're ready to put all your life experiences and resources to work. You'll do this in practical ways. Areas of homesteading, environment, and community will benefit from your knowledge. Be careful not to shoulder all the responsibility in your endeavors. Let others help you with your goals." Unquote. Next, I'll reflect on the book meaning and see how it applies to me. Some of it doesn't. I know that I have zero interest in homesteading. I journal my thoughts, and it would say something like this. I think my challenge is that going back to school will be a lot of work. I have a lot of experience that I can apply to my schooling, unlike the other kids in my classes who just graduated from high school and have probably never even had a job. It feels like a heavy burden that I need to do better than them because I have so much experience. I feel like the teacher will expect more of me and everybody will rely on me for advice. It also feels like a burden that I need to pass my classes or I'll lose my job. Next, I add in my own thoughts about the card. One thing I notice is that he's carrying the wands in the most difficult way possible. He's pushing them along the ground with his head between them, when he could put them in his arms or put them over his shoulder. He's also on a stage, which makes me think that perhaps he's putting on a performance about how difficult things are, regardless of whether there are easier solutions. So I think about all of these things and try to come to my own conclusion, which I write in my journal. And that is that my message is that I need to ask for help and find an efficient way to handle the workload without being dramatic and spending the next few years complaining about how hard it is. The final card is the opportunity, and I drew the Queen of Pentacles. Here's what the guidebook says, quote, "You are more in tune with your feminine, mothering side than ever before. You are enjoying the beauty around you. You are sensitive to your environment and the needs of others. You count your blessings, give thanks, and give to your family. You feel satisfied because the prosperity you enjoy is a direct result of the hard work and sacrifices you made." Unquote. So the guidebook says that the results of going back to school are clearly great for me if I can overcome my negative thoughts and survive the hard work. Getting a degree may actually be a blessing. Maybe I should be thankful instead of pissed off. When I look at this card, I see a beautiful scene, honestly an idyllic life, and that makes me feel very positive about the future. Step 7 is to take your time. There is no hurry to come up with an answer to your question. Especially in the beginning, it may take a few hours or a few days. When I started reading for other people, and I still do this, I will talk with the querent and pull the cards. Then I tell them that it might take me a while to figure out the message, and I'll let them know when I'm done. When you're doing a reading for yourself, there is no time limit. That's another benefit of making notes in some kind of a tarot journal, because you can refer back as often as you need. Step 8 is to record your final answer. When you feel like you've come up with your final answer, record it in your tarot journal. Here's the question. What obstacles, challenges, and opportunities will I face if I go back to college and finish my degree? Here's how I would answer it. My main obstacle has to do with my thoughts. I am starting off with a negative attitude because I feel like I'm being forced into going back to school or I will lose my job. However, I know that it is possible to change my attitude and it is holding me back. And I might even be a little bit excited at the opportunity, or I would have just quit and found another job. My biggest challenge has to do with a big workload. However, it can be managed more easily if I handle things efficiently and without drama and ask for help. Finally, the opportunities that I face when I get my degree are amazing. I will have many blessings, including more time with my family and increased prosperity. I feel like it will be worth it. I wanted to add some do's and don'ts that will help you reading tarot. Here are 4 things I suggest that you do not do. Number 1, do not change your question. If you ask about the obstacles and challenges of going back to school and then draw the 10 of Swords, and then you think of a question about who will watch your kids or whether the bus route to your house runs past the school campus, those are additional questions and the subject of future readings. Number 2 is don't keep drawing cards until you get one you like. Both of these first 2 cards are kind of scary, and I would have preferred to see something like the Sun card instead of the 10 of Swords in the middle position, and have my big challenge to be getting used to the visibility and recognition from doing so well in my classes. Work with the cards you draw. Take as much time as you need to figure out how these cards apply to your question. Usually the most helpful readings are the ones you have to work for. Number 3 is don't put too much pressure on yourself. Think if you're trying to learn how to swim as an adult. It's already challenging, but don't make it worse by deciding that you're going to be the next Michael Phelps and beat his record of being the most decorated Olympian of all time. Figure out how to get your face wet first and then set your next goal. Remember that you are learning, and the reality is that learning takes time. Remind yourself that you are practicing and not making life and death decisions. Also, you do not have to follow the advice in your readings if you don't want to. Try to make it low stress. And the final thing is not to stress if your interpretation doesn't match the guidebook. That's okay. Not everything will apply, and sometimes nothing will feel right. That is why people go to tarot readers. It's because we can discern what makes sense and how the cards answer the question. If every situation was in the guidebook, people would buy their own tarot cards and never need to consult a tarot reader. So it can be a good thing if your interpretation is not covered in the guidebook. Here are the 4 things that I think you should do to become a better tarot reader. The first thing is to keep practicing. This is the only way to get better. It might be as simple as asking a question such as, "What is my message for today?" and drawing a single card while you're drinking your morning coffee. The second thing you should do is trust your intuition. I post my readings on YouTube, and some of my interpretations have been pretty off the wall in my opinion, but I stick to them. I've learned to recognize the feeling when I know I've gotten it right. It's like I just know. I also know when I'm not happy with what I've come up with and need to give it more time. The third thing that I recommend you do is study the cards' meanings. I feel like this is the foundation to giving good readings because the more you understand the cards, the better readings you give. There is a practical reason too, and that is that sometimes I get nothing intuitively, and knowing the accepted meanings allows me to start somewhere. Even if my intuition doesn't ever kick in, I can still give a good reading. And my final recommendation is that you keep learning. I've heard master tarot readers say that the more they learn, the less they think they know. Tarot is a lifelong study. Find people you respect and learn from them, whether it's taking courses, reading books, or watching videos. Everybody approaches tarot differently. The more you learn, the better tarot reader you will become. I hope that this video gave you some ideas about how to read tarot. Please leave a comment if you'd like to share what you've learned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.